Here. It's not Sabbath yet, right? As we welcome the Sabbath. Yeah. We have marching 422. Good evening, everyone. Can we all take seats so that we can get tonight's program started? As we welcome the Sabbath, God has blessed us all to be here in His sanctuary. And I'm delighted to see all of you who have made it to this special evening of worship and praise with a very special guest, Dr. Nedley. And here, before we start, we will sing a few songs as praise and worship. For our first song, we will sing hymn number 422, Marching to Zion. 422, Marching to Zion. We'll wait for them to play it up on the screen so we all can join our voices and sing together. We will stand up. prayer, I'll ask Brother John Mesa to pray for us.
Here. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us now the time to come to your place of worship here in Ranelagh Church. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to come earlier to worship you and to hear the message that you have prepared for each of us today. I would like you that you can bless all the leaders of the church and especially the speaker. And I ask you this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
While we're waiting for Dr. Nedley, we have the privilege to sing one more song. So we will sing The Old Rugged Cross. We'll remember what the Lord has done for us and the price that awaits us. And that's hymn number 159, The Old Rugged Cross.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. This is really a very special moment that we have been waiting for really a long time. And we are really happy that Dr. Neil Nedley is with us. So he has been with us since Wednesday this week, having presentations here in this church, but also in Dublin, in other places. And we are happy, really, that he's here with us. I'm sure that many of you know Dr. Neil Nedley from previous presentation, but I will just say a few words about him for those who don't know. Dr. Neil Nedley is a practicing physician in internal medicine with an emphasis in gastroenterology, mental health, lifestyle medicine, and a difficult-to-diagnose patient. He developed a highly successful 10-day residential depression recovery program for treatment-resistant depression and anxiety, and of course, 8-week program as well. Dr. Nedley is author of many books, including Proof Positive Depression, The Way Out, the 8-part depression recovery program with workbook series, and Training the Trainer for community mental health education programs. Also, a book, The Lost Art of Thinking, How to Improve Emotional Intelligence and Achieve Peak Mental Performance, something that tonight's presentation will also talk about. So the title of tonight's presentation is Social Relationships and Emotional Intelligence. So we really look forward to his presentation. And before that, I would like us to warmly welcome him.
Thank you. It's good to be with you again this evening. We enjoyed much of the nature of Ireland today with the national park. And I didn't catch the name of the national park. It's my second national park. Okay, yes. And beautiful lakes and mountains and some nice hikes. We actually spent, 5.8 miles, I think, which is the equivalent to a little over 8 kilometers hiking. And beautiful greenery. We know why Ireland is associated with green, all sorts of shades of green everywhere. And of course, it wouldn't have been complete without a rainstorm. And we got that in the middle of it as well. And so we have very much enjoyed our few days here. And we hope that this is also a helpful presentation for you. Daniel Goleman, when he described the 5 components of emotional intelligence, mentioned that one of the components is knowing your emotions. This, of course, is very crucial to improving our emotional intelligence, which has a lot more to do with our future success and happiness than other measurements. And in knowing our emotions, it's not just identifying our emotion, but the thought-emotion connection is crucial. And this can take time for people to realize because they think their emotions are just due to what's happened to them. And they don't recognize their own thought-emotion connection. And so in our programs, it sometimes takes a little bit of time to understand that connection. But when we start to understand it, we can start to greatly improve our emotional intelligence because we can change our thoughts. We can change our thoughts much more easily than we can change our previous activating events, which no one can do, and no one can do that for you. And if we can change our thoughts into what's more accurate and helpful, it will make a tremendous difference. The second aspect of emotional intelligence is managing our emotions, which is very important for us to have self-control. So obviously those two would play a role in regards to our social intelligence, which is the subject of tonight's meeting. And Number 3 and 4 are very connected with our social life. The third aspect of emotional intelligence is recognizing emotions in others, and that means also being able to exhibit positive caring traits such as empathy towards others. And then 4 is managing relationships with others. And so you get an idea of why emotional intelligence is so important for our happiness, because a lot of our happiness is related to healthy relationships. And social intelligence. Of course, this is an area where some people are significantly lacking, and this tends to be identified if you're very much lacking in this area and don't seem to improve in this area. You are going to be rated to be on the spectrum and autistic or Asperger's or things of that nature. But you may not be on the spectrum at all. It may just be low social intelligence and the low EQ aspect of things. And then there are people that are clearly not on the spectrum that are struggling in regards to their social life as well. And then the fifth component is motivating ourselves to achieve our goals. So if you look at those, at least 2, 3, and 4 are definitely related to our social life, although 1 and 5 are also going to affect our social life. And of course, as human beings, we are social creatures. The family units that have been made is part of that whole social structure. This is our first aspect in regards to our social life, has to do with the family units that we are born in which we will talk about here today. Now, one of the things, let me see if I can back up here. One of the neurotransmitters that helps us with our social relations is serotonin. If we don't have adequate serotonin in our brain, we are going to tend to be disagreeable creatures. We're not going to very easily get along with others. And so it can also adversely affect our mood. As you can see, lack of serotonin, you'll feel down, you'll be more irritable. Insomnia is more common if you don't make enough serotonin, you can't make enough melatonin. Feeling on edge and even panic can occur much more readily when serotonin isn't around. Although many people with lack of serotonin have this calm exterior but a tense interior, they tend to be more impulsive and worse executive function. This is one of the reasons why, as you might imagine, this is the #1 class of mental health drugs sold, are ones to try to augment serotonin activity, which of course they don't augment by helping us make more serotonin or make more receptors. They augment it by plugging the reuptake channels, which produces some benefits, but also some risks as well. Serotonin does have an impact on social behavior. Serotonin amplifies neural representations of positive social preferences, whereas serotonin depletion shifts neural value computations towards selfish or even negative social preferences. And so the less serotonin, the more selfish you tend to become, and the more you actually see social relations as being negative and not something all that positive. Serotonin positively correlated with sensitivity to social factors and modifiable social behavior for better or for worse scenarios. So in other words, you're willing to maintain a social relationship and be patient with that. You're more likely to be cooperative, and you're more likely to be sensitive to others as well. Serotonin system is shaped by environmental stimuli leading to couples' reciprocal serotonin and environment interactions. These are all studies done in the last few years. So social affiliation, also very much related to serotonin, promotes feelings of connectedness and affiliation, and as a result, individuals will engage positively with others and form strong social bonds. So in general, the neurotransmitter serotonin has an inhibitory action in the brain in that it's deeply involved in the regulation of emotion and behavior, including the inhibition of aggression. So serotonin can even help us when we might be more willing or think about reacting in ways that are aggressive to actually inhibit us from doing so. And in regards to aggression, low concentrations of serotonin have been associated with lifetime aggression. Aggression in patients with mental health problems as well will be low serotonin. Even violent suicide attempts have been associated with low serotonin, even impulsive murder and recidivism, meaning that even after we get out of prison, we're more likely to murder again if murder has occurred in a person with low serotonin. So this is something that's very key for us to be able to improve upon. And one of the things that transpired about 2 decades ago was in California, where I'm from, we have quite a prison system that's there. And in California, they were losing a lot of money on the prison system. Governments are not known to be able to run things very well when it comes to economies and being able to cut the expenses in ways that aren't going to harm things and be able to still have California do well. And because they were losing so much money, they actually bid out the prison systems to private contractors. One of the private contractors, who was a friend of mine, actually won the bid, and they said, okay, we will let your company run these certain prisons. There was about 4 or 5 prisons that were involved. And the first thing that Terry Moreland instituted, he was the one that got the contract, was an interview of the prisoners when they were being admitted. And that interview actually was an educational interview where they educated the prisoner in regards to diet and neurotransmitters. And you'd be surprised, but what in regards to this nice educational activity that these prisoners were able to receive, the prisoners then had a choice. Were they going to go to the plant-based portion of the prison where it serves healthy food that would actually improve their serotonin levels, or would they go to the typical part of the prison where they would have a carnivore diet and a typical prison menu? Anyone want to guess what percent of prisoners, after being educated, decided to be on the plant-based diet? You would think not many. It was actually well over 90%. Said, if this is going to help my brain, do better, then I'm willing. I'll go to the plant-based portion of the prison. So What types of foods did they feed them? Let's see if we can get into this. This is some more benefits of serotonin. Patience. Serotonin release in the orbitofrontal cortex and the medial frontal cortex, this is in the frontal lobe of the brain, is vital in the regulation of patience. And so this is also a very important attribute that is key for us to be able to have good social relations. I think I mentioned this yesterday at the hotel, new study. Thank you. Analyzed data from more than 32,000 middle-aged women. This is from the Harvard Nurses Health Study. Found that eating one medium orange a day lowered the risk of developing depression by 20%, and it helps with depression by increasing serotonin via a metabolic pathway called the SAM cycle 1 pathway. Serotonin is more challenging to get in the wintertime, and so, fortunately, that's when oranges are ripe and ready to eat in the wintertime to help us through the seasonal depression that can take place. So, insufficient dietary tryptophan and insufficient brain tryptophan can be one of the reasons. Tryptophan is converted to serotonin in the daytime in response to light, melatonin at night, and niacin or vitamin B3. The problem with it is it's the least abundant amino acid in the diet. And the conversion of tryptophan to 5-HTP is inhibited. See if we can get you to up to date here. It's inhibited by stress. This is one of the reasons, we'll have people come to our program and they'll tell me, I've had this, it's usually about one every program, will come to us and say, Dr. Nedley, I am here because you are the brain biochemistry expert, and I've been researching on the internet what's wrong with my brain, and I've tried this, and I've tried that, and I've tried all of these things, and I'm not getting satisfaction, and so I'm here for you to fix my brain biochemistry. I don't need to go to counseling. My problems are real. They're saying they're real biochemical problems, but counseling's not going to be able to fix them. Well, the issue is that if we handle stress better, we actually make more serotonin. So it's kind of one of those feedback cycles. When we make more serotonin, we can handle stress better, but if we are able to manage stress better, our brains will actually be able to make more serotonin. And it's very important for people to raise their frustration tolerance in order to be able to manage stress. We are producing individuals today in society that in general have low frustration tolerance. We call it LFT. And that means that little things tick them off, and they will get upset about this or that. And just the usual nuisances of life, they have a hard time handling. And this is something where if you have a healthy person, it's like water off of a duck's back. They don't even notice it. It's not a big deal for them. And they're able to handle those nuisances and still maintain quite a positive attitude. And there's several ways in which we raise frustration tolerance in individuals that come to our program, but one of the simple ways is actually contrast hydrotherapy. We actually teach them a song before their first contrast hydrotherapy treatment. What is contrast hydrotherapy? You're in a nice, warm jacuzzi bath. We use Fahrenheit over in, I know you guys, the UK used to use that. That's where we got it from. But then you guys were too influenced by the French and went the metric system way. I don't know if you know the French, they tried to change the week into 10-day weeks They went into 10 hours per day, 100 minutes, 100 seconds, pretty vicious totalitarian institution of the metric system, and somehow that influenced Ireland and Great Britain to change everything over to tens and in the metric way, but America was resistant to that, and so we don't have things like Celsius, we have Fahrenheit, we still have miles instead of kilometers. We still have all those things. I don't think it makes too much difference, to be honest with you. Oh, by the way, the 10-day week versus the 7-day week made a huge difference. The 10-day week was a terrible flop, and it caused the mental institutions to rise to capacity. We have 7-day rhythms that are built into us. And the scientists, apart from the Bible, have no explanation for this because there's nothing divisible by 7 in nature that they've been able to find. The moon, the lunar month is not divisible by 7. The year is not divisible by 7. Even the solar year is not divisible by 7. And so why is it that not just humanity, but face flies and algae and plants have this 7-day rhythm that's programmed into them? And so that 7-day week has been tried to be abolished several times. Stalin tried to abolish it. He said, well, the French did bad with 10, let's go to 5-day week. And we'll do even better. Well, the 5-day week was a complete flop as well. So even the mathematician Laplace, who was big for the metric system in France, Laplace said, you government officials, you better change this. This is not good for society. And they changed it back to a 7-day week, which is what the whole world pretty much operates on today. But back to the hydrotherapy treatment that we recommend. You're in this, well, I was going to go into Celsius there. So it's 104 degrees Fahrenheit is what we'll warm it up to. And that's 40 degrees centigrade or Celsius. Excuse me. And then after they warm up for about 3 to 5 minutes, then they go into 1 minute of a cold bath. Now, it's not an ice bath. It's about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and I think that would be maybe 15 degrees Celsius. And so you're there for 1 minute, and then you go back to the warm for 3 minutes, then back to the cold for a minute. And the studies show it has to be uncomfortably cold to have a positive effect on the brain. Not dangerously cold, but uncomfortably cold. And that uncomfortable coldness actually stimulates our heat shock proteins to warm up. So we actually end with the cold. We do 3 cycles. We end with the cold, and in the process of warming up, the brain circulation improves significantly. The person actually feels better. Their chronic pain can be gone. All sorts of different positive changes can take place. But despite the fact that we're telling them why this is the case, they are very worried about getting into that cold bath. And we have to tell them this is one of the things that's very important in our social relations. Excuse me for a minute. One of the things that's very important in our social relations is to not get into I can't stand it-itis. We're magnifying things out of proportion when we tell ourselves that we can't stand something. And individuals be very fearful because they think they're not going to be able to stand that cold water. And we have to tell them, no one has ever died getting into this cold water. Now, of course, if we kept them in that cold water forever, yeah, they might. But, you know, we're not going to do that. By the way, studies show if you get into the cold water longer, it actually even has a better benefit. Up to the maximum we'll keep someone in there is 8 minutes, but we're only going to keep them in there a minute, and we're going to get them out. Now, some people will be in there even longer than a minute because they stand there in the cold tub and they don't go down. The timer doesn't start until the shoulders are in the cold water, so they can make it longer than they need to on this. But the little song we teach them is just this song. I don't like it, I don't like it, it's okay, it's okay. I can stand it anyway, I can stand it anyway, I'm all right, I'm all right. And that song teaches us just because we don't like something doesn't mean we can't stand it. And when we tell ourselves we can't stand it, that's when emotions get out of control, that's when we lose our temper, that's when anger builds up, that's when our brain quits making serotonin because it can't do it anymore, because our stress level is too high. And so it's not just nutrition. There are things, multiple things that are important for us to get enough serotonin. So notice the conversion of tryptophan to 5-HTP is inhibited by stress. It's inhibited by insulin resistance. Now, what's another name for insulin resistance? Diabetes. Can you have insulin resistance without diabetes? You can. What is that called? Prediabetes or metabolic syndrome. So we actually measure everyone's metabolism to see whether they have metabolic syndrome. If we find out they do, what are we going to do to improve that insulin resistance? We're going to have them avoid sugar. Yep, that's important. Anything else? We're going to have them exercise. Exactly right. And if you have metabolic syndrome, that's a gene, by the way. It's not something that's necessarily due to you. The fact that the gene is activated is probably due to you, because genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger, and the lifestyle phenomena that pulled the trigger is lack of exercise, too much fat, too much sugar in the diet. And so we have them lower their fat intake, lower their sugar intake, and they need to exercise in a way that stimulates their heart to beat faster for 60 minutes a day. That's how long we'll put someone on an exercise program with metabolic syndrome. And it will greatly improve their ability to make serotonin. And so, by the way, diabetes, sometimes we're calling it diapression today because it comes along with depression because of that insulin resistance phenomena where we can't get enough tryptophan into the brain. Also, it's inhibited by magnesium deficiency, vitamin B6, lack of light. Lack of light is very common in Ireland. In what season? Yeah, what time does the sun come up here in December? Yeah, it's late. I know I've met Irish people that tell me in the wintertime they're going to work when it's night, and they go home when it's night. And in the daytime, they're inside, and they don't get to really see the light. And so, yeah, I think it's very important for you to get adequate light. The Norwegians seem to be a little more knowledgeable about this. You know, Norway's even more north than Ireland. And on every station up there in Norway, they'll have light box stations. So you actually go in to get your light. And we thought it was white light that was best, 10,000 lux, which is pretty bright white light. We now know it's only the blue and the white that was working. White has all the spectrums. And so, but the blue from the blue sky is what stimulates our serotonin production. And so I would encourage you to get one of those blue light boxes or blue light glasses. I think our team, we didn't bring enough of them here, but I don't know if we have any left. Magnesium deficiency will do it, B6 deficiency, and the older we get, the less efficient we are in making serotonin. And this is why in yesteryear, in the 1960s and prior to that, depression was very rare, even in America and in societies. And it started to really increase in the late 1960s and in the 70s. But you would not see it in young people. It was primarily in the elderly. And the term wasn't depression that was used. In America, the term was midlife crisis. So if you had a midlife crisis, that was another term for depression because it wasn't prominent at all in young people. But now, all age groups have had an increased risk of depression, and particularly the younger age groups. In fact, the younger age groups will tell me that among their peers, if someone is not depressed or anxious, they're the abnormal one. And so it's actually considered normal to have significant mental health issues among our younger generation. And this is actually sad that it's considered normal, but the good news is it can be resolved even in young people, and it can be resolved more readily. We'll see this among our young people. Their brain will actually be even more neuroplastic and be able to get out of it even quicker in many respects. So dietary tryptophan does not necessarily equal brain tryptophan. We'll give you an example of that. So it's not just getting tryptophan in the diet, which is the least abundant amino acid. It is getting it into the brain that's important. And whatever is in your bloodstream in tryptophan does not get into your brain. It has to have a carrier. The circulation changes in the brain. It's called the blood-brain barrier. What that means is it's almost like steel pipes when your arterial circulation goes into your brain. Why does the arteries become steel pipes? Because the brain is the most sensitive organ to toxins. And toxins tend to be large molecules. And the brain doesn't want any large molecules in there. Also, the oldest cells in your body are in your brain. In fact, the cells that were being formed when you are an embryo are still alive in your brain. And those brain cells need to be protected. So we have a blood-brain barrier that's very important for us to maintain cognitive function throughout life. And so that means only carriers will take a large molecule. Tryptophan turns out to be a large molecule, so it can't make it across the blood-brain barrier. But there are specific carriers for it, as well as other large neutral amino acids. Same carrier for 6 different large neutral amino acids to make it across the blood-brain barrier. And this is important that we have the right ratio of the other amino acids to make sure there's carriers left for tryptophan. I think we went over this earlier. So tryptophan supplementation, as you might guess based on the evidence we've given you so far, will improve. Well, let me see. Let me back up here. I don't think that's on there. It improves a number of things besides just social affiliation. We can just say that without going into all of the different details of what it improves. Yes? Oh, thank you. All right, so let's take a look at the foods rich in tryptophan. 234 milligrams per 100 grams. Oats are a good food for tryptophan. Tofu, also a great food. Flax seeds, even more per 100 grams. Walnuts, even more. Sunflower seeds, even more. Sesame seeds, even more. This is why in the Middle East, the Lebanese are known for the hummus. I wish they would distribute hummus to the other countries around there. It might improve the serotonin levels and make them a little more agreeable with each other. But you can also have sesame seed butter, which is tahini. How many of you have had tahini before? Okay, quite a few. For those who haven't had tahini, I would encourage you to try it, but be patient because the first time you try it, it has an aftertaste and you might not like it. It might be a little bitter. But I've noticed after the third or fourth attempt, people can't seem to get enough of it. Chia seeds even higher, and pumpkin seeds actually top the list. Pretty inexpensive, at least in America. How are pumpkin seeds here? Do you guys? Yeah, they're pretty reasonable? Good, yeah. Reasonable way to get your tryptophan, and tryptophan from pumpkin seeds will actually make it into your brain. So, but we need tryptophan, carbs, and B vitamins to help with mental health. So the three critical dietary factors to improve mood and cognition: tryptophan, carbohydrates, and water-soluble vitamins and minerals. There is tryptophan in meat, but meat is very poor in carbs. Rich in protein, rich in fat, but carbohydrate deficient food. And carbs are particularly important for brain health. This is one of the main reasons why it is. This was printed in the Journal of Psychiatry. Let's see if I can go back to it. I think I had my hand on this. Tryptophan is transported in the brain by a transport system that is active toward all the large neutral amino acids. Tryptophan is the least abundant amino acid in protein. I've already stated this to you in so many words, but this is a quote from Dr. Simon Young. It's competition between the various amino acids for the transport system. So after the ingestion of a meal containing protein, the rise in the plasma level of the other large neutral amino acids will prevent the rise in plasma tryptophan from increasing brain tryptophan. The idea common in popular culture that a high-protein food such as turkey will raise brain tryptophan and serotonin is unfortunately false. And so these individuals that think they need to load up on protein, they need to take protein supplements, they need all this in order to have brain health, are actually hurting their brain health because they're saturating those carriers with other large neutral amino acids that prevent the most important amino acid, tryptophan, to make it across the blood-brain barrier. But it's not just that it needs carbs. This is the ratio of tryptophan to the other 5 competing amino acids. And in reality, we probably shouldn't have beef or chicken on there, but that is the correct ratio. Why shouldn't we have them on there? Because those are carbohydrate deficient foods. So even though they're low in those percentages, they're really not going to get across the blood-brain barrier. Tofu does have a lot of carbs, so you'll get tryptophan across the blood-brain barrier with tofu, but there are other foods where you will get it across more readily. Brown rice, spinach, pumpkin seeds, quinoa, flax seeds, even cauliflower is a great mental health food. Sweet potatoes, even higher. Grapes, whether red or green, are higher yet, and the highest source is chia seeds. And so do they sell chia seeds up here? Yes. Okay. It makes it all the way up to Ireland. So yeah, chia seeds are high in omega-3, great source of tryptophan, and great for that ratio. And it's one of the reasons why these top foods to get tryptophan across the blood-brain barrier are used abundantly in our program, and you'll learn all sorts of very tasty recipes that can help you with your mental health, thus improving your social life as well. Okay. Let me see if I can. That had a similar ratio, but you couldn't see the foods as well there. In stress-prone subjects, once again, high-carb, low-protein food prevents the deterioration of mood and performance under uncontrollable laboratory stress conditions. Stress-prone subjects have a higher risk of brain serotonin deficiency, and in such subjects, higher natural carbs increase personal control. So people are often surprised with all the natural carbs that they find coming to our program, but there's a reason for it. We want their personal control to increase. We want their frontal lobe to do better. Carbohydrates prevent a functional shortage of central serotonin during acute stress due to their potentiating effect on brain tryptophan. Sunlight exposure is also very important, bright enough light to be able to make the serotonin. And this is one of the reasons why depression and mental health issues are more common the more you get away from the equator. So this is one of the challenges, but we can, of course, make up for that as a result of light therapy. A detailed study sampled jugular blood from male volunteers, one sample every month of the year. Findings showed that serotonin levels, of course, lowest in the winter. But they rise rapidly with increased luminosity or bright lights. Also, exercise. I'm sorry you didn't see this one, but I have it on my screen. Let me see if I skipped over it. Yeah, here we go. Exercise increases serotonin synthesis as well. And it stimulates the release of endorphins, increases BDNF, reduces inflammation, and can also help with stress reduction. So this is the reason why physical exercise is a major part of improving the mental health of really all of us. And it's important for us, as I mentioned yesterday, physical fitness is actually better for your brain than it is your body. Studies have shown recently that we have more of this than ever before recorded in human history, and that is loneliness. And I don't know if you've noticed this even in Ireland. Do you think this is up in Ireland? Yes, I see some nodding heads. Interestingly, loneliness increases when there's overcrowding and population density. So the more dense the population in general, the more lonely you become. Other associations: increased screen time. And this has been shown in a lot of different studies. Social media makes us antisocial. It actually takes us away from real social interactions. And we can show you more data on that. But the happiest people on the planet are those who use screens less than 1 hour per day. But you tell a young person that, and they think you're taking their happiness away from them. They don't notice the connection. It's like, wait a minute, mom's telling me not to use this device. She doesn't want me to be happy. And they don't realize how much happier they would be without it. It's not like they couldn't do anything. A lot of times young people think, if I can't be on this screen, then what am I going to do? I'm just going to sit here in these four walls and not do anything at all. They don't realize it's very unnatural, even for a kid, to just sit there with four walls and not try to do anything. If they're bored, they're actually going to go out and seek some social interaction. They're going to go out there and seek real face-to-face social interaction time, which beats screen social interaction time amazingly well. Also, other associations, geographic mobility. There's a lot of moving that's going on, so a lot of change in the social interactions that are occurring face-to-face. Changing family structures. Some of those changing family structures, I don't think we'll have the time to go into per se, but the changing family structures have to do with the fact that it's not bio mom and bio dad together raising the children. Anyone want to guess, at least in America, I don't know what it is in Ireland, what percentage of children do you think are raised by both bio mom and bio dad at the same time, in other words, living in the same home, all the way from 0 to 18? Someone's guessing 50% of the time here in Ireland? That would be great if that's the case. It's 25% in America, and it's starting to go down from there. So 3 out of 4 kids are not being raised by bio mom and bio dad at the same time. And as a result, there are attachment disorders that are much more common in children today. Children of yesteryear tended to have secure attachments. The secure attachments were by an attentive mom and dad who were self-sacrificing to parent those kids and to make sure that those kids were raised appropriately. And what has been noticed to produce the biggest difference is to have not only a loving parent, but an authoritative parent. Now, what happens when the parents split is often there is a competition for who can be the most popular parent. Because when the kids get of age, they're going to tell the judge, all right, this is who I want to live with. And the judge is going to listen to the kid and say, okay, that's who you live with. You know, we had a 19-year-old girl come through our program recently. Severe panic disorders, high anxiety, depression. She'd already been suicidal. And she was having panic out of the blue multiple times a day. So I was interviewing her, and her parents split up when she was about 7. And her mom is who she told the judge she wanted to live with. I said, why did you choose your mom? My mom let me do anything I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it. And my dad, he had rules. He was a disciplinarian. And I did not want to live with my dad. I said, so how did it work out with you with Mom? Well, she always had another boyfriend coming in that would play a role. She was drinking. She'd do other things. The reason why she was permissive is because she didn't have any rules for herself either. And this girl ended up with serious mental health issues. And at age 19, I asked her the question, having to do it over again, who would you live with? She said, I made a big mistake. I should have lived with my dad. I said, who's paying for you to go through this program? My dad. You know, there's good news even for people like that. In 10 days, her panic and anxiety was gone. Her dad picked her up, and he broke down crying. Wow, my daughter is back. What have you done with my daughter? Wow, I can't believe this. And she was so glad to see him. And she was going to do the next 20 weeks with her dad because she knew she needed someone with accountability to help her stay on the program that had gotten her better. And so these changing family structures, one of the things that's also been shown in regards to family structures, we won't go into it with this necessarily, this particular audience. We have 4 lectures that we give in the university on this, on sex and mental health. There's a lot of sex that is very unhealthy for the brain. And there is sex that is healthy for the brain. Virtually all of the sex that is simulated, or at least filmed, on TV is unhealthy sex. And so, although it may be attractive to a young person, if they simulate that, they're going to actually start doing their brain some significant damage. And some of the, let me just give you, I think I can basically say this. One of the sex researchers who has shown that not all sex is the same, there's healthy sex and unhealthy sex, is Stuart Brody from University of California in San Diego. And he has stated that other forms of sex that are not healthy will produce all sorts of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous issues. It's going to produce some neurotransmitter issues. It's going to lower our dopamine. It's going to lower, pick off dopamine receptors, all of those things. And he mentions there's only one type of sex that is shown to be healthy, but only under certain conditions. If there is complete commitment to each other first, and that's why you've never seen healthy sex on TV, because people that are completely committed to each other are not going to allow themselves to be filmed publicly in their intimate act, because they are committed to each other. and that commitment is extremely important for making oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding chemical that's very important for positive social relations. But the type of sex will also produce prolactin. Prolactin will protect your dopamine receptors. If your dopamine receptors are protected, 35 years later, the sexual activity is just as warm and intimate, as exciting as it was on the honeymoon, maybe even more so. And culture will tell you it's going to get worse over time. It doesn't get worse. It gets better over time if you're doing it in accordance with the principles that we were designed to fulfill. And so the type of sex that produces the high prolactin levels that protect your dopamine receptors so it doesn't get worse over a 3.5-year time. Now, it won't get worse right away. Studies show it takes 3.5 years for these bad things to actually start really plummeting. This is why relationships tend to only last less than 4 years, and it gets old and stale, and you don't like your partner anymore, etc. Phenylethylamine, that's another brain chemical. Phenylethylamine is the love chemical. What does that love chemical do? It causes you to be less aware of the faults of the other person. And phenylethylamine will die down after 3.5 years. It'll die down after 3.5 years if you are doing the sex too frequently or you're not doing it in the healthy way. So one of the unhealthy ways that partners get into is non-PVI sex. So what's PVI? This is what Stuart Brody says is the healthiest sex. PVI is penile vaginal intercourse. We would call that sex by design. That was the way it was actually originally designed. And when we get away from PVI, we are going to run into significant issues over the course of time in regards to this. So, in regards to, and let's see where I was going with this. So, as you know, there's been a great rise in behaviors and even marriages where PVI is not even possible. And often this is thought to be due just to genetics. And by the way, genetics has clearly, there's been all sorts of genetic studies done on the LGBTQ community, and well publicized in the journal Science, etc. There is no gay gene. Someone who tells you that they're born gay because of their genetics is totally non-scientific. There is no such thing. You cannot predict. It's not like race. Sometimes they try to make it into race. You can tell genetically what race a person's going to be. There is genetics behind race. No question about it. There's genetic, aspects, and of course we can obviously see that and understand that, etc. But they try to point it out that this is like race. Someone's just born this way. No, they're not. There are environmental factors, however, that can lead them. So it's not a genetic issue. There's environmental issues. And of course, one of those environmental issues is abuse. If you've been abused as a child, you're much more likely to go that direction. But it's not just abuse. There are children that have not been abused who've ended up with same-sex attractions. And the popular culture will tell them they have to act on that in order to be fulfilled. No, acting on that's going to cause more issues. It's going to cause even more brain changes, etc. And so you actually don't want to act on that. But what are some of the factors that can do that? Sometimes it can even happen in a loving two-parent home. Let me tell you my own story. I was born into a lovely two-parent home where both parents were willing to be committed to each other before I was born. That means they were willing to self-sacrifice for me. They were willing to raise me in good ways. I was well on my way of being raised with secure attachments and not anxious attachments or avoidant attachments or those types of things that have become more commonplace today with the change in family structures. And so, I was number 5 child. My father was an engineer for General Motors and designed automobiles. And he was working in the daytime for General Motors, and at night he was working for Wayne State University teaching engineering night classes. He was a great teacher. He got Teacher of the Year, even though he was a night class teacher, because he made it so interesting and so absorbing for his students. He taught thermodynamics and other such engineering classes. And he was doing that to make an income to support 5 children and all of that. And so he was doing it for the love of his family. But at age 5, I got to be friends with a boy the same age across the street. And that boy and I did everything together. We played Legos together. We were with each other from sunup to sundown. And that boy actually came from a family of 10 kids, so I got to know some of his other children above and below him as well. I was number 5. There were 4 above me. But one day I came home to my mom, and I said, "Mom, when we grow up, Randall and I are going to get married." And my mom says, "No, you're not." And I said, "Why not?" I said, "We love each other so much. We do everything together. We like being with each other." It had nothing to do with sex. I hadn't seen his sex organ. He hadn't seen mine. Maybe we had when we went to the bathroom and stood there. I don't know. But I don't remember any of that. It wasn't anything that was that was going on per se. But I said, "Why not?" She said, "You'll figure it out." That night, she told my dad, "You have got to quit your job at Wayne State University. You need to come home and have a male figure in this house that our son can look up to." And he did. In fact, I remember even at age 5 when he came home, at first, he was so busy working, he wasn't sure what to do with me. And Mom would say, "Go out there and play ball. Just play catch. Go out there and do this. Go out there and do that." So my dad would go out there and do it. And pretty soon, my dad became my best friend. And my dad was a great father in so many ways. I learned so much from him. And I never had a desire to marry Randall again. Never had any same-sex attractions. Never had any of that. But just think of as if I had a modern mother that had been schooled by modern culture and not shown things like true science. And then was taught, "Oh, well, maybe my son was just born this way. Oh, well, yes, I think maybe you should marry Randall when you get older. Let's see if we can foster that." And then we went into fostering that, and then all of these adverse brain changes as a result of acting on that behavior started to come forward without understanding and all of that sort of thing. So changes in family structures, that's kind of an understatement in regards to why we have loneliness at an all-time high. Another issue, internet addiction. And we mentioned social media. I want to open it up to questions, but I know I have too many slides here. Loneliness has been shown to be correlated to depression, anxiety, perceived stress, hopelessness, suicidality, fatigue, decreased life satisfaction as well, and an increase in mortality and an increase in morbidity. This is kind of interesting. Maybe I'll mention this in regards to social networks. The differences between males and females. Notice the mortality risk. Blue is males. A male who is not married, and this was a study before gay marriage was even possible. So this would be heterosexual. But notice a man who is not married has almost 3 times the mortality of a man who is married. Now, women also do better married, but I've noticed which gender, when there's a relationship, wants to push the marriage button more. It's often the women. The women are wanting to go to the marriage altar even quicker. But actually, it benefits the man a lot more than it does the woman. Now, I understand from a male perspective, there is an issue in regards to commitment. You're not just choosing a roommate for a year in college. This is a lifelong commitment. Are you willing to have that commitment? But if you find the right woman and you're willing to have that commitment, it is a very healthy thing for a male. By the way, although married women a little bit happier, thank you, than non-married women, interestingly, the unhappiest women on the planet are either divorced or married. Women are not the unhappiest women. Now, the happiest women on the planet are virtually all married. And so, but it's very important for the woman to marry the right person, maybe even more so than it is for the man to marry the right person in order to have that high level of happiness. Now, few friends and relatives, notice who that adversely affects more. It affects women more so than men. Non-church members are adversely affected by being a non-church member in both men and women, but it adversely affects women more. And non-group members also adversely affect women more. So if a man is married, those other things are helpful, but if they're married to the right person, that is even more helpful than these other things in the studies that has been shown. I was going to go into more of the thinking errors here, but I see our time is running out, and go into also attachment issues. But let me just notice some things about studies recently done on social behavior and emotional intelligence. Friends and emotional intelligence. Higher emotionally intelligent people actually have fewer close friends. Just 3 to 6 close friends. Higher emotionally intelligent people also enjoy their solitary time. They enjoy things like gardening, reading. They value deep conversations with authentic individuals. This is something that is a sign of emotional intelligence. They're more independent, self-reliant, comfortable taking care of their own needs, and they're selective in forming relationships. In other words, just the people that are friendly to them is not going to be enough. They want to be selective in forming the relationships. And as a result, they're also less susceptible to peer pressure. Low emotionally intelligent people are going to be much more interested in what their peers are doing and fitting in with the group and having that social pressure bear down on them. Also, they value personal growth, and they also value fostering the growth of others. And so this is one of those friends and emotional intelligence aspects of things. Now, one of the things that's going to be very important and key in our having that social intelligence is not having issues with authority figures. One of the things that's a key part, the Harvard Mastery of Stress study showed this, is that people that have mental and physical disease are set up for it in many cases at a young age because they had issues with their authority figures. Now let's take a look at a little bit of this study. 91% of those who did not have good relationships with their mother and father had significant diseases by age 50. That is huge. You know, there's a commandment talks a little bit about that. Honor your what? father and your mother, that your what? Days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Well, we have direct evidence from this long-term study called the Harvard Mastery of Stress Study. And now, what about those 9%? Some people think this is like fatalistic. If you don't, some of you here probably don't have good relationships with mom or dad. What's going to happen to you? You're going to have significant disease by 50 unless you have someone that's like mom and dad, who is a loving, authoritative figure, not just a loving figure, loving, authoritative figure in your life who can help guide you in the right way. And it might be a coach, it might be a pastor, it might be, the junior division leader, it might be a teacher at the school, where it's not just a teacher, but someone who's able to mentor you. What if you have a good relationship with one, but not the other? Down to 50%. Still not very good for you to have a serious disease by the time you're 50. What about if you have a good relationship with both? It ends up being 25% chance, only a 1 in 4 chance you're going to have a serious disease by the time you're 50. And so it's important to develop good relationships with our parents if at all possible. Now, this is something that's also pretty key. We know good mothers are important, but I want to emphasize something about the children of loving, authoritative father. I had a father like that, and I know it's helped me tremendously. But studies show, in comparison of not having a loving, authoritative father, you'll be a higher chance of being an A student. You'll have higher IQs. You will be better problem solvers. You'll be more likely to enjoy school and be engaged. You're going to have higher economic and educational attainment. You'll be better able to handle strange situations. And you'll be more resilient in handling stress. In addition, you'll be more curious and exploring. Less chance that you'll ever suffer depression, improved life satisfaction as well. But the list goes on. It's actually pretty amazing. Let's see a little more of the list. More likely to succeed in work. You're going to be more dependable. You're going to be more trusting. You're going to be friendlier, more mentally healthy, more socially accepted. You're going to be more popular and well-liked than kids who don't have a loving, authoritative father in their family. And you'll have more pro-social sibling interactions. You'll tend to get along with your siblings better as well. But the list goes on. Higher conformity to rules. You're going to much more likely have a long-term successful marriage. You'll have more long-term close friends. You'll have higher empathy for others. You'll have higher moral values. You'll, notice this, 80% less likely to be in jail. This is one of the reasons why we talk about when it comes to disparities. Often when we look at racial disparities where there's a lot of races in a certain area, it turns out that these racial disparities break down when you realize that the actual issue is the parenting. Did they have a loving, authoritative father in their home? 75% less likely to become unwed parents. And of course, better physical health as well. And then, I think this is the last one. I think we already went into that. Less drug use, less stealing, less acting out, less disruptive behavior, less lying, less suicide, higher GPA, and we already mentioned the IQ. But interestingly, the cognitive distortion. Tomorrow we're going to introduce you to more of the thinking errors or cognitive distortion that are very common. But the cognitive distortion that is most common when people go against loving authoritative figures, whether it's in the household or whether it isn't, is actually the cognitive distortion of mind reading. People have a tendency to mind read authority figures. And they think the authority figure, if they don't like what the authority figure is saying, they have this tendency to think the authority figure does not understand them, and the authority figure is just trying to get into the way of their personal happiness and success. And that's virtually not going to be the case. That might be the case 5% of the time, but 95% of the time it's not going to be accurate. So they're mind reading the authoritative figure. And, you know, even if you're an authoritative figure in government, there's no one that's more mind read than whoever the president is of a country by the media. The media is going to tell you why he's doing certain things or she's doing certain things, and most of the time, it's not even the reason behind it. They are mind-reading authoritative figures, and the authoritative figures might have the general well-being of their citizens as the reason why they're doing things. And so I think it's very important to give deference to authority figures. I think, that's one of the things that the Bible mentions, is that we're even to obey the authority of government officials that we disagree with, as long as it's not going against the commands of God. And so if we have that more deference towards authority figures, we're going to come out more socially adjusted in general. Now, of course, there's a major challenge when your authority figure is drunk, when your authority figure is doing things wrong themselves, and when they're neglecting you or when they get involved into you, they're abusing you. This is what our 19-year-old girl had to succumb to in regards to her mother. And it produced some significant issues. But even those issues can be resolved if you go to the right place and start working on the cognitive distortions that develop. This girl had significant distortions of mind reading. She had significant distortions of mental filters, which anyone who's been traumatized tend to have a mental filter. What's a mental filter? This is where you're only looking at one side of the equation. You know, we had a gentleman come to our program recently that said, "There's nothing good in my life." I said, "Nothing good?" He said, "My job stinks. My wife nags. My bills are piling up. I had to take this program out on credit card." And he says, "Furthermore, I'm short and fat, and now I'm going bald. Nothing good in my life." And, as I talked to him, I realized, he did have a wife, and she was a beautiful wife. He did have kids that he enjoyed. He actually could still exercise well, even though he might have been short and fat. He didn't get short of breath when he was exercising, and he was able to build up fitness, and we could build up a lot of things that were positive in his life. But what did he come with us with? Nothing good in my life. Mental filter. And so how do we overcome a mental filter? We have to be forceful and intentional to look for evidence to support a different way of thinking. And so I think this is crucially important. Now, we have a book, if you want to learn, I know I just introduced you to this subject of our social life and emotional intelligence. But there are 2 books. Well, we only assign 1 book when someone's going through the program. If you go through the 8-week program, you might have got assigned this book. It's called Learning to Tell Yourself the Truth. Before your social life can improve, you have to learn how to tell yourself the truth first. And the follow-up book to that is Telling Each Other the Truth. We don't know how to tell each other the truth until we're able to tell ourselves the truth first. But if you are able to do both of those things, because the best social relations are the ones that are transparent. We don't need to be inhibiting in telling the truth to people, but if they're our friends and we want to have good social relations, we need to be able to tell the truth in love. We need to do it for a good and overall purpose. And we can't do that until we're able to tell ourselves the truth first. But with those 2 books, you would be set up, if you apply those 2 books on a cognitive behavioral therapy standpoint, you would be set up to have the best social relations in your life. It'll help your marriage, it'll help your family, it'll help your workplace, it'll help your kids, and you will be able to be enhanced greatly by learning to tell yourself the truth first, and then telling each other the truth, and then changing our relationship with authority figures, and not go into mind reading them. It's okay to not know exactly why they're exhibiting their authority upon you. But in fact, I probably should close with this part of things. Let me see. I already talked some about marriage. I was going to talk about workplace and how we can kill the morale of other people. But I wanted to mention this. Throughout life, we're going to be asked to deal with problems. And I like to differentiate the problem that you're facing into one of 3 categories. A practical problem is something that makes it more or most difficult for you to achieve your goals. An emotional problem is your emotional reaction to your practical problem. When you have a practical problem, you're going to tend to have an emotional reaction to that. It's just natural. But then there's something called an imagined problem that we really shouldn't have an emotional reaction to. An imagined problem, there we go, is a problem that doesn't really inhibit you from achieving your goals. You're just upset about the idea of the situation. And we could give some examples of that. We've had many people come to our program that are complaining of all sorts of things, and I'll say, has this inhibited you from achieving your goals? No, but it might, but I'm just upset about the idea of the situation. Well, if it's not inhibiting you from achieving your goals, why invest so much emotionally into that situation and tear yourself down? But what if it is a real problem that makes it more difficult for you to achieve your goals? Once we recognize our emotional reaction to that problem, it's often best to relocate the emotional problem. How do we do that? Tell yourself, I will have this really bad problem, whether I'm miserable about it or not, so I might as well give up the misery. That will actually help you feel more towards neutral, and when you're neutral, your frontal lobe will be in a better position to do something wise about it. This is when it's actually okay to say, it is what it is, now how can we make the best of it? And this attitude helps you to feel better and more calm, and it puts you in a better position to do something more intelligent about the problem. So I will close at this point. I think I probably do have a closing slide. Let me see if I do. Actually, I think that was the closing slide. And so we'll be glad to open it up. For those of you that want to learn more information or even know how to get those books, nedleyhealth.com is our website. So I just want to put that up there so you can be aware of that. But I'll open it up for a few questions at this point. Any questions? Yes.
You mentioned authoritative parents a couple of times and the significance
Yeah, an authoritative parent is one that has rules and makes sure that you're accountable if those rules are violated, but does it in a loving, compassionate way. Yes? What inspired me to do what I do? Well, because I was seeing so many mental health issues in my practice. Yeah, depression and anxiety were skyrocketing. And so I realized the necessity for me to become an expert in it. So I did a lot of research to be able to help individuals that I was seeing. I think I described that a little bit yesterday in regards to that. If you want to, I don't know, was that taped yesterday? It was not taped yesterday. Okay, yes.
There's a question, somebody's watching online and they have a question for you. And they want to ask, how do you work the lymph glands that are not working very well?
The lymph?
Glands.
Yes. Yeah, I would have to have more characterization on how they're not working well. But lymphocytes are the glands are filled with lymphocytes, and lymphocytes are a type of white blood cell. And that's most involved in fighting viral immunity as well as fighting cancer. And so one of the things, it's a practical application tonight, if you have anxiety, your lymph cells do not work as well. Anxiety markedly suppresses particularly viral immunity, and it's one of the reasons why cancer is increased among those who are anxious. And so one of the best things you can do is if you have anxiety to find out the reasons for that and see what we can do to reverse those reasons and resolve the anxiety. Anxiety is not something that you have to live with for life. There's also some other things as well. The contrast hydrotherapy actually helps the lymphocytes work better. The infrared light that we get from the sun also can help them. And of course, physical exercise can help. The lymph glands love when we go out and exercise as long as we don't over-exercise. So those are several things that can be helpful. Yes? Oh, good. We're going to have a roving microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nedley. I wanted to ask, I'm reading a book titled Unstressable by an Egyptian writer, Mo Jawdat. I thought that title was very ambitious. And do you think we can get to a point where we are actually unstressable? And do you think some of the things that you're telling us today can get us to that point?
Yeah, so one of the things in helping us to be able to combat even severe stress is what we've been talking about, and that is enhancing our emotional intelligence. Interestingly, there was a study done it was actually a study done by the military. I didn't see the reason why the military was doing it, but the military significantly stressed individuals and then basically put them into moral dilemmas. And a moral dilemma is one of those things that can produce significant stress. And what they found out, for instance, are they going to, when someone's going around looking for individuals in a home, you're in a military type of situation, what are they going to do when the soldier arrives? What are they going to tell them? All of those sorts of things in regards to moral dilemmas. And they found out that people with low emotional intelligence will change significantly in regards to from what they said they would do versus what they do when moral dilemmas are coming at them. But the high emotionally intelligent people do not change at all, even under sleep deprivation, which was interesting. So they sleep deprived these guys. And if they had high emotional intelligence, they stayed firm to principle on what they said they would do even beforehand. And this is someone who is, I wouldn't say they're unstressable. Stress, of course, is going to be felt. the heart rate's going to go up in those situations. It wouldn't be normal for it not to go up. You are going to have more circulating adrenaline going around. But are you going to actually change your morals when those things happen? And high emotionally intelligent people don't. And so I think that's the key of actually being where we can combat even the most severe forms of stress. We actually have, as part of our EQ Summit, I mentioned his name. I didn't mention his name yesterday. I mentioned his name, actually last night. I mentioned it at the noon presentation that I was giving to another group. The most quoted researcher in all the world, his name is Roy Baumeister. What is he researching? Self-control. And of course, you can't have self-control unless you're able to manage your emotions. And he's written a book called Willpower, the Greatest Human Strength. I actually asked him to come and present at Weimar University at our EQ Summit. And when you're the most quoted researcher in the world, even though he only lives 100 miles away from me, he was going to charge $20,000 for one talk at Weimar University. So we decided to go a different direction. But the individual we got was Professor Kang, K-A-N-G. And if you can get his talk, the name of his talk was Self-Control Under Extremely Adverse Circumstances. And it's a great talk, very moving talk, but it's filled with principles on how under the most severe adverse stress you can still maintain composure and maintain emotional stability. And it's possible, but I can tell you, high emotional intelligence was developed first before he was exposed to all of those situations. All right, any other questions? Yes. Oh, wait, there's someone else with the microphone. Who has the microphone?
I do have it.
Okay, good, thanks.
How do you know you are over-exercising or if somebody is addicted to exercise?
Okay. So how can you tell if you are over-exercising? Well, I mean, there are some parameters for most human beings. Studies show that if you're running for more than 8 miles a day, the risks are going to start outweighing the benefits. And what are those risks going to be? They're going to be stress fractures, orthopedic injuries, things like that. They're going to inhibit you from actually being able to exercise much thereafter. They're also running a marathon, although it's a great human feat. By the way, people who run marathons, they don't run marathons every day. They're usually running that 8-mile length, and they're stopping at 8 miles. And then they'll train one time and run a half marathon or something, or maybe they'll run a marathon as a practice event to compete for the actual marathon. But marathons have been shown to suppress your immune system. It's not a healthy thing for your body, so it is an over-exercise situation. If you do it once a year, I think, it's great. You're obviously physically fit to be able to do that. I wouldn't necessarily want to discourage someone from doing it once in a great while, but it is going to produce some problems. Now, I'll just tell you briefly, we have, right next to Weimar University, we have the most physically demanding fitness test known to mankind. It's a 100-mile race that starts at Lake Tahoe, goes right past Weimar, and ends up in Auburn, California, and the person is going 18,000 feet up, 23,000 feet down, fjording a river, starting the race at 5 in the morning, and the winners are finishing when it's still sunlight, having run 100 miles. People compete. You have to run a 100-mile race somewhere else first before you can get in, and then there's a lottery to choose the people because so many people want to be part of this #1 fitness test. But I'm a doctor in the ICU on the day after that. And it doesn't get publicized by the media, but there are significant health issues that may affect people for life as a result of running that 100-mile race. One was a 32-year-old, very fit Australian farmer. He finished the race, could barely walk. The medical tent said, well, you just ran 100 miles, what do you expect? The next morning, he couldn't get up, and he was brought in by ambulance. His heart rate was 20 beats a minute. He was in complete heart block. His potassium was 8. For those in the medical field, you know that that's enough to stop your heart. In fact, in bypass surgery, when they do surgery to stop your heart, they inject it with that type of potassium to get the heart to stop. Why was his potassium so high? His CPK was over 100,000. He had lysed all of his skeletal muscles, all the potassium had gone out. Myoglobin, which is the muscle oxygen exchanger, had gone out in his bloodstream and had blocked his kidneys, and his kidneys couldn't get rid of the potassium. So he was in acute kidney failure for overdoing it on exercise. So that's overdoing it. And as I was explaining to his wife what had happened, she said, this was a very stupid decision we made, wasn't it? To come run this race. We had to give him IV calcium. We had to do things to get his heartbeat going again. We had to then dialyze him and put him on a dialysis machine. And that same day, I treated a man who had not completed the race at mile 70. He had taken ibuprofen because his muscles were getting painful and sore, and he vomited up and retched. And he had immediate chest pain. They thought he was having a heart attack. He wasn't having a heart attack. He came to the hospital. The next morning, I'm coming in, and he's eating crackers with this chest pain, being given pain medicine so he could eat the crackers. And I said, don't eat any more crackers. We need to have you swallow some barium. So I had him swallow some gastrografin, and the gastrografin went out of his esophagus into his chest. He had retched a hole in his esophagus. It's called Borhavis. Again, one of the complications of overexercise. Another individual, great knees before the race, but afterwards had to have both knees replaced in the age of 30-some. So we're into exercise, we're not into overexercise. And it's very important for us to be moderate in regards to even vigorous exercise, but we want you to be fit. You don't have to have that level of fitness, however, in order to have good mental health. All right, was there another question about that? Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nedley.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the presentation. I was more interested in your description of authoritative father there, and certain pictures just popped up in my mind. I mean, on an anecdotal basis, I think we know that an authoritative father would most likely produce, more responsible citizens of the society. Like in America, for instance, we have the Asian families have the highest median income in America. Now, even though I don't have any studies saying it's down to authoritative fathers, but I know that the Indians who have more authoritative fathers than most other cultures. What would you say to ideologues who would call this toxic masculinity?
So, yes, there's all sorts of things that can be called. Sometimes they will call it patriarchy as well. Patriarchy, based on what I've just told you, is actually a good thing if it's loving, authoritative patriarchy. It is where we need to react against patriarchy is when it's selfish or when it's not authoritative and radical from an unloving perspective. And I think that's why we have society that reacted in ways against patriarchy, because we have had patriarchy that's not loving and not authoritative. So but I don't think even those that are going to complain necessarily about patriarchy can show any evidence that loving, authoritative fathers are bad for society or bad for their children. The studies are very clear. It's actually very healthy for their children. Now, what happens, though, when we start talking about toxic masculinity is that everyone thinks that masculinity is bad, per se. And yes, toxic masculinity, if it's self-centered, is bad, but not all masculinity is bad. Masculinity is very healthy when treated from that loving, compassionate, authoritative manner. There's very positive things for testosterone to be in that household. And testosterone actually improves IQ, it improves persistence, it actually can improve patience, it can improve the protective behavior of the family. There's all sorts of positive things. Testosterone is not universally bad. And it actually helps the mental health as well. So I think we need that balance, and unfortunately in society we tend to go from one extreme and then go over to the other extreme, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and then we end up with maybe even a worse situation with the other extreme. And unfortunately, I think this is what is happening with society, going from one polar extreme to the other. Does that make sense? Yeah, all right. Any other questions? Yes. Okay.
And a test to be done online to measure EQ?
Yeah, so there is a test that we actually have on our website called the DAT test, the Depression and Anxiety Assessment Test, which has an emotional intelligence test embedded in that. That's how we test everyone that comes to our program. That's a worthwhile test, and that can even tell you some areas, some categories that you can improve upon to improve your emotional intelligence. As I mentioned last night in the program that was just run here, the average EQ went up from 105 to 120. So 105 is a little bit above average, went significantly above that, comparing those DAT tests. There are more sophisticated emotional intelligence tests. They're costly, but you can take them online and get an idea from that as well, and kind of get a breakdown in regards to that. But just let me beware, when you're taking emotional intelligence tests, don't think you know what answer they're searching for. It's hid in a way that you need to be honest. And some people think they're actually low in emotional intelligence, and they're actually pretty high. They're low because they're fearful of taking a test. They don't think they're good test takers. But if they're honest, they may come out quite high in emotional intelligence. And then there's other people that pride themselves, I've got high EQ, and they'll find out they're pretty challenged. Not as good as they thought they were. So yeah, it may be helpful to do that. Well, you've been a very attentive group, and I know you, hopefully you'll be able to be here tomorrow. What time tomorrow, Sharon?
Yeah,
okay.
so obviously church starts at...
Pastor Ivan might be able to help us with that.
Okay, so you are welcome tomorrow to come for the service. The presentation will be at 11:15. So by Dr. Nedley, Bible and Emotional Intelligence, and then at 2 o'clock, Impact of Social Media and Smartphone Use on Brain Development. So yeah, you're all more than welcome. So thank you again. Thank you again. So then, hope to see you tomorrow. So we are closing here the program. Thank you.